As per the branch update, we will be continuing our meetings with once in a month with each CPD programs, which we have already prepared, and the links will be shared. And today's section will be handled by Mr. Rees, our Vice Chair. He's the head of L&D Safety Department. He will be presenting topic on traffic management awareness. I believe most of us have the awareness on what zone traffic management we can normally use to say. Right. So Rees will be giving us more idea on this section, and I hope you guys will really enjoy the session. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it on the chat box, and Rees will be answering those sections at the end. And also, if you have any other queries related to IIRSM Qatar branch, feel free to contact us regarding the membership or renewal. If you face any difficulties, we'll be happy to help you guys. Right? And let's work together and help each other if you have any doubts. Right? So next month we'll be having meeting on 22nd March, where we'll be planning our face-to-face section and online section as well all together. Right? So I like to welcome Rees now for the section to give us awareness on traffic management system. So I'm handovering the session to Rees. Rees, the session is for you now.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Deepa, you might put yours on silent or something so we don't get echo. Okay, yeah, thanks very much. Look, this is just, I was asked by one of my HSE managers to just give a brief overview of traffic management, temporary traffic management. So I've titled this as awareness, just so that we can have a basic understanding of really some of the critical aspects of traffic management that you see prevalent across probably all areas of Qatar at the moment. So when you're driving past next time and you see cones, barricades, signs and people working, you'll have a basic understeer of what they've had to go through regarding the setup so that members of the public can negate, drive past these traffic management routes without creating too much conflict between members of the public and the contractors and staff doing the actual work. So this is an overview. There is a lot more detail in traffic management regarding specifications, criteria, planning, etc. And for that, I would recommend that you get a copy of the Work Zone Traffic Management Guide 1.2, which is available on the internet on Google. So you can download that and have a look. This also won't cover the applications requiring all the documentations that you require to do any work on the public highways. For that, you will need to read the Work Zone Traffic Management or speak to Public Works Authority or Ashgal or any experts within your own organisations that deal with and manage traffic management. So we start by, hold on, how do I'll have to use these. Okay, the purpose of, is this in the way, this screen here? How do I make that? Let me just get rid of this. Okay. Okay, that would do. Okay, the purpose of any traffic management is to provide adequate, sufficient warnings to members of the public that there is an obstacle in the right of way that they are travelling on. And this may be on the carriageway or on the footpath either side of the carriageway. So the main purpose of temporary traffic management is to provide means for drivers to continue on their journey without creating any conflict with the traffic management in place, so that they can continue on their journey as safely as possible. Now, with that said, there are huge amount of traffic management work going on in Qatar, as I said, and the document that we follow regarding specifications, requirements, etc., of how to install, maintain, and demobilize your scaffold, your temporary traffic management, as I said, can be found in the work zone traffic management guidance document, which is equivalent to the UK version of Chapter 8. Basically, the same principles apply, and basically the same content, apart from the work zone traffic management guide has got better pictures in it. So that's the purpose of temporary traffic management. It's not permanent, as it said there, it's temporary. It can be 15 minutes, a day, a week, a year, or even longer. And the duration of the traffic management protection, the specifications will be indicative of the length of the works and obviously the speed and the congestion of the traffic that it's designed to protect. Okay, yeah. Next slide. Okay, I've gone back. That one now. Okay, responsibilities, I've probably just all said this now. I said the traffic management requires the contractor to do any work to provide a level of responsibility for the safe responsibility to all road users. Designed to eliminate any conflict between members of the public using the carriageway and those conducting the works. Speed limits should be appropriate through or negating the traffic management at all times. It's designed to protect the people actually doing the work. So we look at barriers, etc., different types of barriers. We can refer to the protection area of the workers, the work zone. And early warning of any hazards. Now, the biggest hazard the driver is going to face is that there is something in the middle of the road that he's been driving down for the last year, and all of a sudden there's concrete barriers, signposts, etc., machines, low loaders, lorry loaders, etc. And if we can provide, or the traffic management requires that we provide early warning to these drivers so that they can take the appropriate actions to avoid what is now in the middle of the road. Clear directions to all road users, as I just said, to negate round any obstacle or obstruction, be it that excavation work, reinstatement work, etc. Okay, and it requires that traffic control devices must be deployed appropriately. And when we look at words like adequate, suitable, sufficient, appropriately, what that means is we have to comply with the requirements of the work zone traffic management guidance document, although it's not a statutory document, more of a contract document. Okay, so where the word says appropriate, suitable, sufficient, to demonstrate due diligence, we follow the work zone traffic management guidance and the material and the advice and guidance that's given within it. So it can be, because it is a guidance document, be a little bit flexible, unlike legislation requirements. Okay, so the first thing that one of the documents, and this is probably the only document that I'm going to cover, is the traffic diversion plan, often referred to as the TDP. And this outlines, and in a particular traffic diversion plan, you will have copies of the registration forms, any permits required to close the road, excavate on the road, etc. So these are some of the one of the documents that you will find in your TDP. Traffic management drawings, the layout and the amount and locations of any traffic management devices that you're going to have as part of your traffic management. So these will be all sketched out, and these require a number of approvals, the police, ASHGAL, your consultant, and municipality as well. And if one of those signatures aren't there, then I would suggest that your TDP is invalid. Okay, so make sure that all aware. You do get some conflict between ASHGAL on the police or the consultant or someone else, but it's up to the person that's managing this works to sort out those issues, sort any conflict issues out between what is required. But the main thing is these drawings, there are examples of traffic management plans in the back of the work zone traffic management guidance. So I think as long as you follow the examples, 3-lane carriage, 2-lane carriage, single-lane carriage, you go out and you do a recce, a survey of the works, your TTP should be fine. Just bear in mind, don't over-engineer stuff. If it says, and you can use plastic barriers, use plastic barriers. Signs have to be placed. Don't overdo it with signs because you end up camouflaging the site. So there's enough information in the traffic management the work zone guide to allow you to write an accurate TDP regarding the drawings. Bear in mind what you put in your TDP has to be installed on site. So don't draft your TDP just to get it improved with no intentions of implementing any of the traffic management devices that you have documented. So basically, if you mention it, make sure that you do it because you will be checked by your consultant or by any one of ASHGAL's road traffic management audits or assessors. Needs an implementation plan. The most dangerous part of any traffic management is implementation because you are working within live traffic. Once you've installed the traffic management, then you provide some form of safe area. But implementation and decommissioning are two of the most dangerous aspects of any traffic management. So you need a good method statement and risk assessment of how you are going to or how you plan to do that. As I said there, clearance plan. Contingency plan, any disasters, you know, there's no such thing as a safe, guaranteed safe system of work. You're working with road users, individuals that you have no control over. You can't control their speed, you can't control whether they're on a mobile phone, you can't control if they're having an argument with the wife and they're not paying attention. So you need to have contingency plans for emergency situations. The work zone safety, ASHGAL will and can come out and do work zone safety audits to check that you are complying with your TDP, and if you are not, then they can revoke and suspend your works or give you a prohibition notice or improvement notice. And traffic management assessments. These should be done internally by yourself, but also these can be carried out by your consultant or ASHGAL themselves. So let's look at components of the highways. Now we have the carriageway. Obviously the carriageway means where vehicles can drive on and pass along during their journey, but it also includes the media. Some highways have a central reservation that is filled with roadside furniture, lights, poles, grass, etc. In Qatar, what you're seeing now is a lot of the media, the central reservation, is fenced off to discourage people from walking from one side of the carriageway to the other. The carriageway also includes, at the same level, any pathways or cycling lanes. So you need to consider that as part of your TDP, your traffic management plan. I said if curbs are at the same level, you're going to have pedestrians and cyclists, etc., traveling along that pathway. So you need to consider the protection of those people during your design, your traffic management design stage. So that's basically a typical single lane carriageway. cars coming from the left and right to the left. And obviously we have double and triple lane carriageways. So that's the typical carriageway. Then we have the right of the way. This is the area of public, and generally, as you said, it's between two boundaries, and it encompasses the carriageway, the media, the footpath, and the clearway, which I will discuss a bit later. So that's a typical right of way. And if you are if you are doing any traffic, any works, construction works within this area, within those areas, then you need an approved TDP commencement to the project taking place, not afterwards. And if it expires, make sure it's renewed before the expiry date. Like I said, what you don't want is an errant vehicle crashing into your crashing into your traffic management, and you find out that your TDP is invalid. Okay, it will cost a lot of money. Basically, your site will not be insured. So that's generally the right of way. If you create any obstruction on the right of the way, then you need a TDP. Okay, carriageway, cycleways, footway, verges, and the centre. Advanced warning areas, as I mentioned earlier on, you need to give adequate warning to drivers, okay, all members of the public, but we're focused on that there is an obstacle in along their route, in the direction that they are travelling in. And the advanced warning area is generally made up with specified signage, be a standards type signage. I'm not sure what the number is, but they have to meet certain specification. Okay, and these warning signs are located indicative of the speed of the traffic. So the greater the speed, the greater the distance between each sign. I'll read this out rather than just. Okay, so advanced warning area, approaches are informed that they are entering a work zone, i.e. that you've just dug a great big hole in the middle of the carriageway, or doing some other work that's going to inhibit their driving. If a temporary speed limit applies within the work zone, we need to give all drivers enough warning so that they can reduce their speed and drive past the work zone, or on some occasions through it, at the correct reduced speed. Okay, there's been a lot of research, particularly with the Traffic Research Laboratory in England, about certain speed limits, because if you reduce it too quickly, you get this spring effect where one car brakes, the next car brakes, the fourth car slams into the back of the other one. So the speed sometimes might be gradual, from 100 to 80, from 80 to 50. But the reduction in speed needs to be well advanced so that all drivers can adhere to it. The length, I've mentioned it, the length of the advanced warning area, I said, varies according to the approaching speed. But your traffic management is therefore implemented on the approaching speed, not the speed that you've reduced it down to. Okay, so if your speed is 100 kilometers and it says that your signpost should be your warning signpost should be 100 meters, then that's what they are at, not at the reduced speed, for example, 50 kilometers, where your advanced warning signs may be a little bit closer. Okay, so your traffic management is always designed and installed based on the current speed and not any speeds that you use to slow down the traffic. Standard signs, as I said, they need to be, you can look at the specifications, but warning, mandatory, regulatory information and directional signs all need to conform to the specifications. You can't just cut a piece of wood up and paint it white and then start sign writing your own signs. These are all specifications, because as you said, they need to be visible, and they need to be visible both daylight and at night time as well. So the reflective quality has to be correct as well. But you can't mix the signs up. You can't put a regulatory sign on a blue background or a directional sign on a warning sign. Okay, so that's background for signs. The size is determined. Okay, I've mentioned this. The size is determined by the speed of the approaching traffic. Signs associated with work zone, speed should be taken, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if a temporary speed limit applies, signs in the work and the termination area may be reduced by one level. For example, 120 within a work zone subject to temporary speed signs may be 90 millimeters rather than 12 millimeters. Basically, that's what's saying is everything or every traffic device that you install basically is around the speed of the current traffic. Okay. And this table here shows you what type of signs that you need. So if you look at speed limits, 51 to 80, 81, 100, these are the signs of the identifier, height of the signs, word signs, the heights of the letters, and minimum forward visibility, okay, of each signs. So that gets away with having somebody in the back of the yard, as I said, making up their own signs to fit their own purpose based on the material that they've got. So these signs have to meet specific specifications to give the driver some advance notification that there is something in the middle of the road ahead of him. Okay, this is an example, and all these drawings, you know, they're all in the work zone traffic management guidance document. So it will tell you speed, signposts, and what types of signs you can use. So obviously this lane is shut here, and the first two signs that you will always see is men at work. And then there's one here. I can't really read the distance of that, but let's assume that these are every 100 meters. Okay, telling the driver that the approaching road is stopped. Again, at 400, I think that's 400, yeah, 400, maybe 300, blah, 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 etc. Until you get to this sign, these two signs, where it's telling the driver he needs to take the appropriate actions, otherwise he's going to plow into your work zone. So these are really, this is probably the most important aspect of any traffic management. Is that you provide the driver enough warning that he can take and set the appropriate actions. And then there's other signs, cricket ball signs, directional arrows, etc. And also you need to tell the driver the end of the work zone so he can increase his speed and get back into the driving lane there. So as you said, these drawings are all laid out, and you can see they're all cited here to give the driver, and these signs here. And depending on what side of the road they are, they will be switched. Okay, temporary signs. Now I see a lot of these signs stuck on posts or on post surrounded by concrete so that they don't blow over or shifted. Bearing in mind, and it says at the beginning, contingency, signs have to be able to shear if on impact. And remember, you don't have control over all the drivers and the manner in which they drive. And there are occasions when they're not paying attention and the first thing that they will hit is one of your signs. Now, these signs need to break off, and they must, if they're hit by a car, cause minimal damage. And generally they shear at the bottom so that they lay flat. If anything else, such as a concrete pole, you are going to cause severe damage to the vehicle on impact. And on some occasions, we've seen profiling and modeling where a vehicle has hit the bottom of the post and the top of the post has gone through his windscreen. So once again, there is specifications on how you should support your signs. And I think it says, well, it does say there, all temporary sign support structures must meet relevant crash testing specification, such as EN 127.726, 67, and blah, 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 and be approved for use by ASHCO. which means you cannot just stick a sign on the tree that's next to your work zone or a lamppost. Okay, bearing in mind the purpose of traffic management is to ease cars through and to reduce the severity of injury if there was an errant vehicle. So signposts and the structure supporting the sign all have to meet specifications. Transition area. Okay, this is the area that the driver will see, or hopefully not see, before the work area. And this provides enough, should provide enough information for the driver to either stop, meaning that he can't proceed any further, or he needs to switch lane. The taper, once, as I said, the taper once again is indicative of the speed. The faster the speed, the longer the taper. And these have to be lit up so that the driver can visibly see them. And this is where you get your directional signs, your LED signs, and directional accent, because it is giving the driver the last warning that he cannot proceed any further without causing an incident to himself or anybody working in the area. It doesn't take a lot of science to work out your taper edge, because there's a nice little drawing for you. So 100 to 120, typical single lane, 130 meters. Okay, it needs to be at 50 less, okay, 50, 55, taper closure. So all you need to do is just to check the speed of the traffic, the current speed level, and design your taper area according to this table here. So basically all you need is enough traffic management devices, barriers, cones, concretes, etc., and a tape measure to install that. So within the traffic, which includes direction, blah, 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 work to it. What's most important is that you store no material here. As I said, if a car was to hit that, we need to be able to reduce the severity of injury or damage to the vehicle. Sometimes these are cones and plastic because they're just a transition area here. So if you want a car to hit that, or if it does hit that, it doesn't want to drive into a block of concrete blocks or other construction material that is going to cause a lot more damage other than him hitting the barriers here. On safety critical type works, where you've got deep excavations, these will be concrete so that they can delineate the vehicle away. Still going to cause damage, but not at the depth or the severity if they were to plow through and start hitting construction material. So nothing should be stored here unless it's an ATU crash cushion vehicle. Okay, so that's the transition area. As I said, the length of that is indicative of the speed of the road, and on high-speed roads, you'll probably find that that is somewhere up here, once again, to give the driver enough time to respond and move out of the way. And that's some drawings. The taper is based on, in addition to this time, okay, on some local residential areas, it's not, sorry, it may be impractical or not reasonable to install your taper in line with the speed limit. So where the speed limit is reduced or is at a speed of less than 50 kilometers, you can use a 1-to-1 ratio. Having that said, you still require a buffer zone between the edge, between the leading edge, the front, the behind the taper to the work zone, because it's a 1-to-1 ratio is very short. What you can't have is your traffic management perpendicular to the carriageway. It always needs to be at an angle. and even a 45-degree angle. If you're using plastic barriers, that's still 4 or 5 plastic barriers that you would need. So it's just not the case of, oh, we've got a truck pulling up 15 minutes, we just stick a barrier in the way. That wouldn't be appropriate or suitable. So that's a taper area. We have the workspace between the taper and the buffer zone here. Once again, this is for the errant vehicle to crash through, probably not the best word, and continue. Don't forget he's on his brakes here. Hopefully he's on his brakes. So he should come to a stop within the buffer zone here if he's traveling at the correct speed before he gets to the work zone, which is where all the workers will be located. So this, where's my mouse? This area here must be kept clear at all times to accommodate any errant vehicle from missing the taper end and driving through your traffic management here. Okay, so once again, the safety area, the buffer zone, longitudinal safety buffer must be kept clear of all construction materials. Let's just sit there. Okay, there is also, okay, longitudinal. This is a typical, I've just shown you that. The other one I want to show you is, okay, length of the longitude buffer area. Once again, at 120, the buffer area should be 55. So if you add that to your taper as well, for example, that may be 130 meters long, add the two together, and that is your area of safety for your staff, and that is the area where the vehicle under its own steam should be able to stop without driving into your work zone. And I said, remember, we're protecting the workers as well as members of the public. So there's tables there that will give you guidance and reference on distances. I'll just go back. The distance between your work zone and the edge of your traffic management. So you now have the calculations for this in the table, and you have the calculations for this, and this is your safe area. There is also another buffer area, and that is to the side of your work zone, and that should be around about 1.5 meters. Let's sit there. Why it's 1.5 meters is because under a number of tests, if these are concrete barriers and they are secured, the reflection of a concrete bar will be less than 1.5 meters, providing, and this is a caveat, that they are connected together. If your concrete barriers are not connected together, then they create more danger than if they weren't there. A concrete barrier will fall into an excavation if it's hit by a vehicle traveling at 30 kilometers an hour. And there are cases where that has occurred, and you do not want a 250 kilogram concrete block falling on somebody's head. So there is a buffer zone of 1.5 meters. The problem is in some areas your excavations are too wide, and therefore in order to encroach, in order to install your barriers to provide a 1.5 meters, it means that you are encroaching on the other carriageway, and therefore you need a more what's the phrase? A more in-depth, a more detailed traffic management, or if the police allow you, a road closure. Okay, you always want to try and keep your work zone on one or either side of the carriageway. If you need to take up two, then you need to convert this as well. Don't quote me on this, but I think the minimum distance, unless anybody wants to tell me, is 3.67 meters is the width of a single line carriageway. Any less than that, you've got cars squeezing through. So there's two safety buffers. this one here, the longitudinal safety buffer, and the lateral ones. Once again, to reduce the severity of injury of the vehicle or the men at work that are working within the work zone. And any diversion from those specifications probably will invalid your. So this is a example of safety buffer zone, greater than 50 kilometers. Workman here, vehicle this side, and this is your pedestrian walk through here. So you have the concrete barriers here, 1.5 meters off the work zone. The work zone is protected with supplementary barricades, just to make sure that the workmen and the members of the public don't start getting too close to your work area, any plant or equipment. But this is a typical layout of what you'd want to see on part of your traffic management. 2 sets of cones, outer cone, inner cone. If you've got no pedestrians that are likely to walk here, providing these are 1.5 meters away from the workers, you should be fine. But if that car hits that, that will swing. So basically, all your work should be planned on the opposite side of the trench or the excavation away from any traffic management. Okay, work zone. Now, once you've protected your work zone with your advanced warning signs, your exit signs, your traffic management devices, your barricades, generally the work zone will come under QCS. As I said, the work zone traffic is about protecting members of the public and the workers. So generally, the work zone will come under, well, it will come under construction safety, and QCS compliance will be required. But once you've protected it, it should be fine. Typical examples of a work zone, they can be in heavy congestion areas, such as above, once again, or they can be small little temporary work areas here. Where you see or where you undertake any excavation work which is deeper than 300 millimeters, you must install concrete barriers. The reason being, if a car goes through a plastic barrier and continues onto or into a 300 millimeter trench, it might capsize. Okay, so, well, it will probably capsize. So concrete barriers for trenches greater than 300 meters, and generally if it's long-term work, because you need to appreciate that plastic barriers move. There's a little ghost that comes out at night that starts shifting all your concrete plastic barriers. Okay, so your traffic management devices such as barricades, as always, it's indicative of speed, congestion, population of the area where you're working, adjacent to schools, where children play, etc. And probably that's the most critical part of your traffic management, is what type of barricading are you going to use to secure your work zone. We're talking about plastic barriers and concrete barriers, but if your excavation or the area that you are trying to protect is in the vicinity of a compound where there's lots of children, then you probably need to raise the height of the barricades, because children, as we all know, see construction sites as a playfield. And there was an incident just quickly where a small child kicked a ball into the work zone. He went to collect it and he fell down a 18-meter shaft that was undertaking micro tunneling work, and drowned as a result of that. So you need to consider the population of the area, the environment where your traffic management. If you're installing, if your excavation contains H2S, then obviously you need to secure it a lot more than 4-foot high barricaded. Also, if you're in the populated area where people want to take shortcuts because they can't be bothered to walk to the end, once again, you need to increase that level of protection. But these are typical work zones. Keep them nice and tidy. The client likes them tidy. our consultant likes them tidy, and we like them tidy, aesthetically pleasing. And 9,000 visitors to Qatar during the World Cup, they will want to see that we can maintain an aesthetically pleasing, tidy site. So always keep your work zone nice, clean, tidy, material stacked, debris removed at the end of the day, plant and equipment all parked up nice and correctly. Okay, so that's a typical work zone. As I said, it will come under, once you're in there, it will come under QCS, work at height, chemicals, electrical, plant and equipment, etc. Temporary safety barriers, they have to be approved, both in design and the material that you are using. Sometimes they're referred as F-shape, Oregon, etc. But they're all designed to direct the traffic away, concrete ones I'm referring to here, away from the work zone. And if you look at some of the tyre marks on some of the concrete barriers that you see, they do a pretty good job. And if you watch some of the videos where vehicles are ploughed into them, you can see that they generally delineate between 1.5 meters and do direct the vehicle away from any construction or work zone significant hazards. So all safety barrier systems used in temporary traffic management, individual barriers, connection attenuation must meet minimum performance requirements. If you use poor concrete, then they're just going to shatter like paper. If they're not connected, they're going to move, and what you end up with is a concrete barrier sitting in the driver's seat of the vehicle that just smashed into it. So the most crucial part here is you need to make sure that your barriers are connected to work properly. Okay, locations, types, and selecting your types, whether you use plastic, concrete, or cones. There's a nice table in the work zone traffic management which will help you to do that. So it's based on speed of traffic and the length of the works here. You know, short-term works, replacing using a mute to change some light bulbs in an overhead light that's failed. 15 minutes. It probably takes you twice as long to install concrete barriers or plastic barriers. You need to close the road. It is part of your mobilisation to install traffic management. So this is a nice little table that you would use that will give you some reference and dictate which type of barrier should be used and under which circumstances they should be used in. Okay, temporary safety barrier. This is just another picture. Try to alternate colours. It makes them a bit more visible, whether they're red, black, red, white. I have seen some blue ones, so I'm not sure how they got approved. And reflective materials here. Don't try and glue them on. The heat will just dissolve the glue and then you'll end up replacing them, which means that you need to put a man in the middle of the road now or on the carriageway. So if you're going to install stickers on your concrete barriers, make sure that they're clean and they're stuck properly or fixed with explosive bolts, etc. But that's a nice example of how you would want to see traffic concrete barriers. Okay, plastic filled water barriers. Oh God, okay, we know that, it's the case that evaporation exceeds waterfall. And in Qatar, it doesn't take long for standing water to evaporate. And if they evaporate, it means that you need to refill them with water, which means that now you need to place a water tanker on the middle of the highways without any protections. And this is where you would want an ATM in place, a crash cushion. So we see sandbags that are sand contained in plastic, and the plastic gets too hot and it melts, and then you end up with a load of sand on the floor, which is creating another hazard. To be honest, I'm not really sure what the solution is other than to fill them with sand, but then it makes them difficult for transporting. But your whatever method you use, your plastic barriers need to be connected and be resilient to wind. You know, we have some strong winds in Qatar, and you're guaranteed, take a drive after a windy day, you'll see these plastic barriers plastered all over the highways. So they need to be robust enough or sighted enough so they're not subjected to wind tear. They also need to be resilient enough to stop people from taking shortcuts and moving them. So, you know, things that you can help is make sure that they're connected, and that there's it's awkward for them to remove the barricades. If they want to jump over them, then they do that at their own peril, at their risk. But you would expect to see, and this is sometimes what I don't see enough, is a couple of signs on there saying, you know, warning, excavation, work zone, no authorized entry, etc. You know, bear in mind that if you don't refuse, or if you don't put measures in place to adequately inform anybody that they can't take a shortcut, then by default you are telling them that they can. It's a bit like in England. If I leave my garden gate open, then I am intentionally inviting people in. Okay, so make sure that you've got enough signs or warning that this area, beyond this area, is strictly prohibited to members of the public. If not, you are inviting them over. You know, plastic barriers are there to give demarcation and warning. They're not designed to stop people from taking shortcuts, unless you put glue all over the tops of them, and then they probably won't. Okay, so just bear that in mind. But one thing, that they need to be neat and tidy. You know, the problem with, not the problem, the issue that we have with traffic management is it's visible 24 hours a day by our consultant, by our client, etc. So make sure that your traffic management represents your company. Okay, if it looks tidy, that's going to portray a bad image of your company. And you don't need to spend hours maintaining your traffic management. First thing in the morning, commencement for work, or you have a supervisor, traffic management supervisor that just goes around every occasionally, just checking your traffic management is in line or still current with your TDP. Concrete barriers, as I mentioned earlier on, these are subject to specific design criteria, and including the material that they are used, and they have this little triangle shape here. So if a car was to go, it would automatically turn the wheels away rather than in. If they're not connected, and these are the connecting loops here, and there's another barrier here, this will shift, and this will be, as I said earlier on, will end up in the passenger seat or the driver's seat of the vehicle, and anybody sitting in that seat will be squashed. As simple as that. 2-ton vehicle traveling at 30 km/h, the force is enough to shatter the bumper and the engine, so your bones aren't going to last that long. You won't survive the impact, basically, and modelling of research has shown that. So that's a typical concrete barrier. What does it say? Excellent for keeping construction workers safe from oncoming vehicles and designed to minimise vehicle damage. And it says minimise. It doesn't mean that you won't sustain any damage in your vehicle. It just means that you won't go through it and catapult or capsize your vehicle. You're still going to get some nasty scratches down the side, but we can live with that. Okay, this is what happens when they're not connected. Okay, and this is as real as it comes, and this is quite a placid one. I've seen a lot worse than this. As I said, it doesn't take a lot for that vehicle. Look at the size of the vehicle and look at the size of the concrete block. A vehicle hitting that, this will fold just like paper. The strength is not in the concrete barrier itself, but it's in its connection. Okay, and you can go on YouTube and look at crash cushions, and look how effective these barriers are when they are connected. Now, there are alternatives. There are people using supplementary pins, but I'd always advocate that you use the correct design pin and not just a 16 gauge or 12 gauge rebarb. or some tensile wire to tie them together. Remember, these are designed to stop people from killing themselves, both the driver and the vehicle. So traffic barriers integrity is critical and important here. But you wouldn't ask anybody that oversees or manages or supervises traffic management not to enforce that these barriers are connected. As I said, one barrier on alone, it's a death wish, okay, to both the driver and the operator. So reflective materials here, as I mentioned earlier on, and they need to conform to specification as well. As I said earlier on, you can't just go there and start painting reflective materials on or making them up on a printer in your office. These are subject to specification as well, and the spacing as well. If you're traveling fast and they're too close, you just get deflective glare, and that applies to lights as well. So there's guidance there, and I believe this handout is readily available on the IIRSM webpage or our branch webpage, so you can go back and read the material. Lamps and warning lamps. The requirement QCS says that they need to be in place during day and night, but ideally they need to be working at night time. We don't need to go around and check that your lights are all working when the sun is out there shining, because it's just a waste of time. There are spacing requirements as well, and if you're not familiar with the moth and the flame situation, explain briefly, is where you look is where you go. So if you're driving along and you're experiencing and you're seeing all these flashing, blinking lights in your eyes, then it's causing a distraction on what you should be focusing on, and that is driving along safely. So make sure that your lights are spaced correctly. Otherwise, you'll just get the disco effect and the disability glare. Yeah, disability glare, not reflective glare. You only need lighting where there is an obstruction in the road to provide additional warning. Now, I'm not comparing two standards here, but Chapter 8 and an early version of the work zone advocates that you do not need flickering lights where you've got overhead lighting, because you can see the barricades easily enough, and the flickering lights will not add anything to reduce that risk. Having said that and dismiss it, work zone traffic management requires lights to be installed at all times, irrelevant day or night. But you don't need them inside of the work zone. They're there to provide demarcation from the vehicle and the obstruction that you put on the road. Anything beyond that, you do not need flickering lights. Okay. Clear zone. Okay, that's what I mentioned. We nearly finished here. The clear zone. Now, the clear zone is the little piece of land beyond your work zone or the right of way. Sometimes it's referred to as in the right of way or beyond. And the clear way allows vehicles that have lost control to come to a stop, a safe stop, without hitting any furniture, roadside furniture or construction materials safely under its own braking steam. So even if you are beyond the work zone or the right of way, don't start storing your material, excavation plants, machine 360s, etc., in the clear zone. That needs to be kept clear at all times as well. Now, having said that, you do get lamp posts in there, you do get the odd bench in there, but during the work zone, these areas will be protected by advanced warning signage and maybe some light cushioning. Okay, but this is, as I said, something that you need to consider as well. Part of your traffic management is the clear zone. How wide should the clear zone be? And once again, we have this lovely little table that tells you. So at 100 to 120, your clean zone should be 12 meters away from the traffic management or your work area. However, in some cases, an object beyond the clear zone may still require removal or shielding. Okay. Pedestrians. Pedestrians are a nightmare, and they're a nightmare because you have no control over them. You have control over the workers, you have control over visitors, you have control over the client that enters your work zone. What you don't have is a member of the public deciding that I'm not going to walk around there, I'm going to walk through your traffic management. I'm going to walk through your work zone because it's going to take me 5 minutes, 10 or 20 seconds quicker. So therefore, foreseeing that and knowing that it's predictable, we have a duty to consider pedestrians as well. So within any work zone, make sure that part of your traffic management designs considers the safe access and egress of pedestrians walking past your work zone. Because if you don't, they will walk through your work area, your construction area. And I think that there was a slide earlier on that says it should be 1.5 meters. It cannot be any less than 1 meter because it needs to be accessible for wheelchair users. And that pedestrian area is not an area where an additional area where you can start storing construction materials, etc. It must be kept clear all time to encourage pedestrians to use. Typical example of a pedestrian area is here, this one here. So there's a safety factor, sorry, this one here. Okay, pedestrians are protected by concrete barriers and they're protected by entering the work zone here. And as I said, all these drawings and examples are contained within the work zone. So point being, make sure that you consider pedestrians, because maybe when you do your survey or you look on Google Map, that's something that you may not initially think that you need to consider. Okay. Look around when you're driving, see how many pedestrians walk through. Oh, okay. Did I prematurely select that? I think I did. Go back. Okay. So, summary. Principles of temporary management is to provide the smooth transfer of traffic from one place without being inhibited by any obstacle that we put in the middle of the road, that is put in the road. We have a contractual requirement, although not a legal one, but due diligence will be expressed by conforming to the work zone traffic management requirements as industry best practice. We defined a carriageway where the cars run, and we defined the right of way, which includes where the cars run, the median, and where pedestrians and cycle roads. We've discussed work zone, i.e. the advanced warning area, which is one of the most critical parts and is subject to thorough inspections to make sure the signs remain visible, clear, and are located. We've discussed the transition area and the length of the transition area as per the table, safety buffer, work zone, types of temporary traffic safety barriers, concrete, cones and plastic, requirements for light, clear zones and pedestrians. So now all we need to cover is, has anybody got any questions?
Thanks for that, Reece. That was a really interesting presentation. I only had one question, and that's, will the slides be available after the webinar?
Sorry?
Will the slides be available after the webinar?
Yes. I put them on PDF, so they're not that too, but okay, Deepay's already got the slides anyway.
Okay, fantastic.
Right.
So that was the only question. So thanks very much for a really interesting presentation. The webinar has been recorded and will be uploaded onto the YouTube channel. If anybody does want a copy of the slides, if you email branches@IIRSM.org, and we'll arrange to get those to you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Okay.